Inna Segal, you are so welcome to Lips Energy podcast. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much, Alexandra, for having me.
Yeah, it's quite a time difference between us. I'm sitting here early morning, and where are you in Australia?
I'm in Queensland, so Brisbane, Queensland.
So you have a hot or cold winter?
In Queensland, it's pretty warm most of the time. We're just entering the 2 weeks of the year when it's colder, so I'm wearing a jumper. But actually, I was teaching 2 days ago, and I was wearing a summer dress, so we're a bit kind of moving around.
Yeah, that's funny. So, Ina, you are here with us today, and I'm so happy because I know you have a busy schedule. You have children who need your attention, and but we are launching your latest card deck, uh, Healing Heart Oracle or Hjärtats Orakel in Sweden in just a few weeks, and we wanted to get to know you a bit before. So, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited.
Yeah. You know, this whole production is a beautiful thing, something that you have co-created with Jena DellaGrottaglia. And what kind of relationship do you have? Is that someone you have worked with before?
No, actually, well, I mean, I'm working on another card deck because before um your heart healing oracles, I hadn't, and I said to Lisa, who's my publisher in Australia, and that I needed somebody extraordinary and somebody who could just feel, because it's such a feeling card, and the card deck, and it's quite different to others that I've done, and I think that most people have done. And I just said, I need it to express the internal feelings of the heart on the outside. Can you find me someone? And she said, I'll get back to you. And then she said, well, I think I've got the perfect person for you. And then I would just send Jenna ideas, that I had of how I would imagine something, but I'd always go, however, you being the artist, if you get a better idea and here's the description of the card, then send it back to me, and maybe your idea could be better. And so she's very creative and very sensitive, and so I felt like it was the easiest card deck to make in terms of images.
I fell for the theme for you because you have been published in Swedish before, but it's quite a long time ago, and I know that our audience likes you very much. And I fell, of course, for the illustrations. I mean, they're extraordinary, actually. So here is one, just to give the viewer a few ideas. Right? I mean, they're so
Yeah.
beautiful. She's very, very talented, and so are you, Ina. Can you tell me what made you create this oracle deck?
It's such a kind of interesting story, because it came through um a recognition I had after I separated from my ex-husband. And it was essentially, I was having a shower one day and feeling bad about what happened, because no breakups are pleasant. And while I was in the shower, there was a feeling which I don't usually entertain very much, but he was making life very, very difficult for me and my children, and in the separation. And so I was feeling a bit like, my heart was hurting, and it was really, and I was struggling with my heart. And then this insight appeared, and it was a question that I had: when I met him, he was, I guess, somebody who had gone through a lot of trauma in his life, and he wasn't a healed human being at the time, and I was aware of it. But in that awareness, and I was young, but I still really I wanted this fantasy love. And so because I did, I gave my heart away, I felt, to somebody who essentially had hurt many other women prior to me. But, with that idealism that I had, that I was going to be different. And what occurred to me during this experience in the shower was that, um, essentially, I knew that this was, potentially a challenging man, but I had not loved my heart. I had not taken the time to value my heart. I didn't know how to at the time, because I was just so excited about this connection that I thought that I had. And so this wisdom came to me, and it was like, I need to can reconnect back to my own heart, and I need to write my heart love letters, because I essentially, in order for me to actually have love again, which I wanted, I'm going to have to be much more wise about my heart, and not just give it away, but to do the work that I'd never done, which is really reclaim all the different parts and aspects of my heart. And so I started writing these love letters to my heart on a daily basis, in order to reclaim and heal my heart, and meditating on it. And I found it to be such a profound healing practice that, eventually I thought, maybe I'll share it with others.
And then you did. So you created 36 love letters and as many, what do you call it in English? Heart healings. So here is an example of, so I think the book is beautiful because it's in color also. And so you describe each card with a letter, a letter to your soul, and heart healing for each and every one. And it's not just to heal; it's also to uplift parts of your heart, right?
Absolutely. It's to reclaim your creativity. It's to reclaim your sensuality. It's to reclaim your adventurous spirit. It's to reclaim the boldness that we sometimes lose, when we get hurt in our lives, and to journey. And I have to say, I have a new partner, and we've been together for quite a few years now, since I first created these love letters to myself. And the way that I chose to do them, I just wanted to kind of complete this story, was that one day I said, his name is Matthew, and I said to him, can I read something to you that I wrote to myself when I wanted to heal? And being a man, and not necessarily the most emotional, of people, not that he's not, but men, are not necessarily often as emotionally connected as women are. I just want to see what you think of this, because I feel like I'd love to hear the feedback from the masculine side of this. And I read him two cards two love letters that I wrote to myself that became cards. And he was very quiet afterwards. And I said to him, what do you think? Do you think it's something that could help people? And he literally had a tear in his eyes, and he was like, this is so moving. I feel like you have to do this. You actually have to do this. And I think that you're going to help a lot of people who have been hurt in their life, because who hasn't been? And a lot of people who stopped dreaming and stopped really finding that nourishment and the depth and their intuition and their creativity, because your intuitive guidance lives in your heart. and your nourishment for how you live your life lives in your heart.
Yeah. I was writing about this deck yesterday, a chronicle for our member magazine. And I was thinking, it like we talked about, it's not just about, I mean, everybody has parts of their heart to heal, but everybody also has parts that they don't, that don't take the place in their lives that they should. So it's for many reasons, this deck. It's also for finding your whole heart and let the entire heart take its place in your life.
Absolutely. And I think we live in a time where we're so busy,
Yeah.
and that can lead to just living each day in a similar way and not taking the time to truly ask important questions and to be fulfilled. And I felt for myself like that, being a mother, being a wife, being a teacher, being an author and traveling and just doing so many things in my life, that there were parts of me that I never got to see or connect with because I was so busy. And, even if I was busy doing a lot of things I wanted to do, I was still really busy, and in in doing this, I guess, the love letters to myself, it was this experience of, oh my god, this is what it means to truly honor yourself, to take the time to discover, both my feminine, my masculine essence, how to feel myself, how to be joyous, how to have a joyous heart, how to have a heart that has the space for my friends, for my children, for my students, for my parents, for myself.
Mm.
It was a real journey, and I think that when I was doing it, from the perspective of, I want people to really connect to themselves. I really tried to use languaging that was that emotive heart language, where we both acknowledge, right, where we haven't connected to the heart, and we allow the heart to, almost, I wouldn't say necessarily just grieve, but almost be seen from the perspective of, like, I haven't met you at different times in my life, but I'm willing to now, in which case I feel like that aliveness from the heart starts to awaken and meet you, and go, okay, let's work together again. Let's work, or play together, or, enjoy life together, or, explore life together, both through healing, but like you said, going on these incredible explorations and adventures.
I love what you say on the back of the deck. Recognize the beautiful, creative, fun, joyful aspects of your heart and give them wings to shine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for creating this fantastic deck. And I'm so looking forward to seeing what's up next. So,
Yeah.
you have a history of, I have just peeked in Google who you are. Can you describe your soul? Can you present yourself and your soul story, perhaps? What have led you to where you are today? And you are a very intuitive person, immersed in healing and working with loads of people, many students over the years. And I know that you have a history. So let us know,
Mhm.
please.
So I originally came to healing from the perspective of, just through the different ages that from childhood, really. I started with being aware that I had digestive issues and at times ending up um, in hospitals where nobody knew what to do. And whilst that issue came and, it would appear, it would disappear. When I was about 15, I started having back pain that again, I went to physiotherapists, chiropractors for, doctors for, and I would get better or worse, just depending. Like there wasn't huge progress because it was a constant. I also started having psoriasis all over my skin, which is a very unpleasant skin condition. And so from all of that, the accumulation started causing anxiety for me. And because I didn't know, I was, obviously still at school a lot of the time or at university, like in my early stages. And I was in constant pain, so I couldn't sit properly. I found it really hard to concentrate. And I got to a place where I was seeing about 4 or 5 practitioners a week, which
Oh,
was very expensive, very time consuming, very stressful, and things were improving very slowly, but often going backwards. And there was a moment, and I feel like for many people, there is a moment that kind of changes your destiny. And that was my moment of destiny, was that I wake up, I was in agony, my back was twisted, it was inflamed. I, had itchy skin everywhere. I couldn't sleep. I wasn't living my life properly. And I had been seeing a chiropractor for about 1 year at that stage, at least 3 times a week. And so I called him and I said, I've got to come. I'm just in agony. And it was a very short 5-minute drive, but I felt like I was constantly kind of coming out of my body. And when I got to the chiropractor's office, he didn't even invite me into his office. He came out and he just looked at me and he said, "Your body's stuck." And I said to him, "Well, yeah, I know that part. What are you going to do to help me?" And there was this silence. And then he said, "Nothing." And I said, "What do you mean, nothing?" And he said, "Your body wants to be stuck. Go home." And on the way home, I was enraged, absolutely enraged. But at the same time as being enraged, it occurred to me that my body had a language. And it was at that time, it was like I learned English, but it was speaking Japanese to me. And I didn't know Japanese. And so I made this decision that I was going to learn this language of the body because I wanted to understand it. I didn't know how, but I felt like every part of me was in alignment with wanting to learn. And when I went home, I essentially done something that I'd never done before. I had been in absolute resistance of the pain. I had been kind of holding my breath. And so I started breathing with my pain instead of against the pain. And as I was breathing with the pain, my mind started going into doubt and fear, as usually, human beings do. And so I thought, no, I'm going to count backwards from 30 to give my mind something to do. And as that was happening, a thought came, and the thought was, I wonder if there's anything divine out there that could help me, because clearly, I've tried all these different people to help me, but I need something bigger, than me. And I was also skeptical, and not expecting anything to happen. But in that moment, and I had my eyes closed, I felt like this gold warm light just poured into me. And I thought something's happening. And then another very strange thought came into my mind. And the thought was, I wonder what my back actually looks like. And within a moment of that, I literally felt like like there was a switch inside my head and somebody just turned it on. And I could see my back as if, I was taking an x-ray. and I could see where the inflammation was, where the twistedness was. And so, from a place that I'd never explored before, which in the past it was always, I don't know anything, I'm the victim, somebody else knows better than me, because I was very young as well. I went, okay, so I'm so young right now. I wonder, why do I have this? Like, what is it about? I really, really want to know. And I discovered that I'm a very visual person from that experience. I didn't know that before. And it started with immediately after asking, I saw an image of me coming to Australia because I wasn't born here. I was born in Eastern Europe. So I came to Australia, and um, because I didn't know how to speak English, which I thought was really interesting, that there was this whole language thing that was coming up. I didn't know how to speak English. I was bullied for it. I was, made fun of. Like, it wasn't pretty and wasn't pleasant for me. And because I didn't know how to deal with it, all my feelings that I had, I just pushed them down, and then I pushed them back because you don't know as a child what to do. And when I acknowledged that, and I felt the challenge of coming to a country and not knowing how to speak a language and the pain of it, the image changed, and I became aware of how often, my parents also felt like they had this challenging issue between men and women and how to communicate and understand each other. And so, my mom often didn't understand my dad, and my dad didn't understand my mom. And so they were in conflict with each other. And when I would come home, there's often shouting and kind of challenging environment that it took them a long time where they could come to understand each other. But I also instinctively didn't feel relaxed or safe. And so realized that had an impact both on my back pain because the back is about support and safety, but also on my digestive system because it was hard to digest that, I don't know if my parents are going to stay together or not, or what's going to happen as a
Mm.
child. And then again, the image changed, and I saw my grandparents, and my grandparents had gone through horrendous injustice and horror of war. And my grandmother's mom was very intuitive, actually,
Where are they
extremely
from?
psychic.
Where are they from?
So Belarus.
Belarus.
So which is next to Poland for those who may not know. And so it was really challenging because my grandmother's mother had 8 children, and she essentially, when the war started, the Second World War, she said to my grandmother, "You're the only one who's going to survive out of all the children." She was the oldest one at the time. She was 13. And, my grandmother's mother was killed in saving my grandmother's life. And it was pretty horrendous. Then my grandma spent 4 years on her own in recovery, trying to just survive in the forest. And so, and then, she didn't talk about that for 50 years. And I really felt like my grandfather ended up in Siberia in a camp for something he didn't do. And both of them, because they didn't digest or assimilate or understand the experience, and maybe you can't, I don't know. It's it was so traumatic. I felt like they passed it on to me and my cousins and my brother, because everybody has some issues, health issues. And so I realized that ancestry has such an impact on our health and on our well-being and on our thinking and what we believe we can do or can't do in our lives. And so that was a really big one. And then the last part of this whole experience was that I realized that I didn't know how to have boundaries in my life because
Mm.
nobody taught me. And so in a way I was leaking energy all the time. So I would take be with somebody who was in pain, and instinctively just take on their energy and they would feel better, even as a child, even as a 10-year-old, and and I would feel worse, but I didn't know how it was happening or how, I kept experiencing pain from other people and I always felt better. And so this was kind of like, here's all the reasons why you have this pain. And I felt like in acknowledging it was like I really connected to this language of the soul even more than the body, because the soul was, inside the body. And now it was giving me this language through archetypes, through thoughts, through feelings, through images, through memories. And so I fell asleep. And the next day when I woke up, just the pain was 70% better. My back wasn't twisted. And I remember thinking, oh my God, something amazing has happened, but I'm still very skeptical. So just in case, I'm going to try and stay in bed as long as I can and keep exploring this. And so, 2 or 3 weeks, later, which, I spent as much time trying to connect, my psoriasis was gone and has never come back. My back pain was gone and never come back. My digestive system improved a lot, but not completely. That took a long time because of the ancestral element in it. And my anxiety improved dramatically.
Mm.
And I realized through a little incident that happened where a friend of my ex-partner's had come over. I had actually been um learning how to be an author, a writer, or a journalist. I was studying writing at university. And so I was I was doing a project, and so I was sitting next to my computer and typing. And my ex-partner, he invited his friend over, and she was a very, very good writer as well. And so she as I was doing, she said to me, "Oh, what are you doing? Can I help you?" And so on. And so I was like, "Yeah," and so I started talking to her about what I was writing. And as I was talking to her, I saw this cartoon looking image of a liver above her head. So this is about 3 weeks after my own experience. And I was doing this with my eyes. I was opening and closing them. And she said, "Do you have something in your eye?" And I said, "No, but can I ask you the weirdest question?" And she said, "Yes, of course." And I said, "Do you have liver problems?" And she said, "Yes, I do. How do you know?" And as she said that, the image changed, and I actually saw that her father, sorry, I saw an image of her grandfather, and I said, "Did your grandfather have the same physical issues?" And she said, "Yes." Oh my God. And I said to her, Was your grandfather, because she came, I don't know if it was Hungary or somewhere around there. Did your father, did he end up in a concentration camp? And she said, "Yes, he had." "How do you know all this?" And I said, "Do you get nightmares?" And she said, "I do." And then I ended up saying something that I was like, oh my God, because I knew nothing about the body at this stage. So it was quite a shock to me.
You had
And I
no
said, "I feel like
anatomy classes or anything? No.
zero." In fact, when I was in school and we did anything to do with biology, I was like, I want to be an actress and I want to be a writer. I have zero interest in anything to do with the physical body, anything to do with math. I was like, I had to learn French. I was like, I'm never going to go to France, so I'm not going to listen. And I ended up working in France for years. But it was just, you know, you never know, right? And so I knew nothing. I paid no attention in class. I was very good at writing, but I was definitely not good at anything to do with the body. I knew nothing. I was like, oh my God, what's a liver? What does it do? I don't know what it does. It was crazy because I was about 21 at that stage. So I really, had no idea. So even when I said, "This issue's in your DNA," I was thinking, oh my God, I feel so out of my depth. I don't know what I'm talking about. This is so uncomfortable. And then I told her all this stuff about her family, and she was like, I actually don't know this. I'm going to call my mom because I want to ask her so we both can know if you're even telling, if what you're saying is true. Because
Yeah.
clearly I didn't know and she didn't know. So she called her mom, and her mom said, yes, everything Inna said is completely true. So we both looked at each other, and she was 25 at the time. And she said to me, I've just learned more about my family, myself, and my issue than I had in my 25 years of being alive. And she was just like, wow, that's amazing. And then 2 years later, she actually did some kind of a test that came back like a medical one, and they said, well, the issue you have isn't in your DNA, it's connected to your DNA. So she called me, she's like, you were right. And
Wow.
I thought, oh my God, something incredible has happened.
Yeah. So do you still use that power? Is that
Absolutely.
present? Sorry? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I started with my family because I thought, well, you know, this is an opportunity for me to help and understand my family and see if I can help them because each person had physical issues. And so let me start with understanding it. Being an author, a journalist, I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna contact people who know about healing and see if I can interview them and potentially even go to their workshops and learn about it. And so I did that for quite a few years. And I also realized that there was a challenge that I was having was that I could, the more I practiced, the better I could tell and see into people's bodies, and I could see it through their subtle bodies as well as their physical body, as well as kind of their aura, what was going on. So I could connect the life story essentially and what experiences they've had with the physical conditions that were presenting themselves, which was pretty, helpful, I thought, to people. And, and so the more I did that, the clearer it became to me. But I found that a lot of people who were teaching from a place of that they were taught something. And so, that they were teaching what they knew, which is normal, to do. But for me, it was really challenging because I was often seeing something different to what was being taught. And so I
Oh,
had 5 years of immense internal conflict between what I was learning from others and what I was actually seeing that was often very different.
so how did you work with believing in your own experiences rather than what was taught to you?
Again, there was a moment of that where I had I had called we had kind of a newspaper in Australia that's no longer, or magazine that's no longer here, but at that time it was a very kind of famous spiritual magazine. And I ended up calling I guess the editor of the magazine and the owner, and I said to her, look, I've discovered that I have these abilities, and I'd love to come and do some healing on you so that maybe we can exchange with advertising, because I was young and I didn't have any money, and I had a child already by that stage that I had to look after, and bills to pay for. So she said, oh my God, wow, I just had an astrological reading and it said that I needed healing. So yes, why don't you come? And she said, well, how about you just come and do healing on everybody in the office? And I said, well, how many people is that? And she said, about 20. And I said, yeah, like that's great. She said, come over if like 3-day period. So when I started and I came there, at that office, I was really still trying to follow what I had been taught. And internally, I started feeling in my stomach this sense of like, this is wrong. This is, this is actually not helping the person what you're doing. You're trying to follow a formula instead of actually tuning into them, but you can. So why aren't you doing it? So I had this conversation within myself. And after because I'd never kind of done it one after another, in terms of working with people. I think by the fifth person, maybe, I was feeling so unwell inside that I went, you know what, I'm just going to try it my way and I'm going to see what's going to happen. Because the other people were like, well, it's good, but, I don't know, I'm feeling weird in terms of their feedback. And when I was working on this fifth person, and I remember making the decision, this person was saying, "Oh my God, I'm just feeling this transformation." And the experience was so, so different that I went, "Oh, I think I need to listen." And so the next 2 days, I listened and I even said, "Can I redo the sessions with those people that were, that I did it with first?" And again, and I said, "Could you give me feedback?" And they were all like, "Oh my God, I wasn't sure about when you were doing it, at the beginning, but this is amazing." And so I think after, you know, about 30 sessions within it, I think I ended up going 4 days because I wanted to, redo the ones that I didn't feel that I did well. I started to, I felt like, yeah, I'm going to really have to explore this from my own perspective. Not to say that I'm never going to listen or learn from other people, because of course we have to. It's just that I'm going to be discerning as opposed to just taking whatever somebody told me on board. And it particularly challenging because I was so young at the time. So I think by that stage I was 22, and people were still very kind of domineering and saying to me, "But you don't know anything, you're so young." And so it took a lot internally to go, well, I'm just going to try what's coming to me and what makes sense to me, as opposed to what somebody taught me.
Yeah. A lot of courage and trust. Wow, what a story. And what a talking about synchronicities. I mean, you having the opportunity to dive into your own healing ability for 4 days. I mean, that was given to you in order to explore and understand that you should listen inside.
Absolutely. And I think over the years afterwards, it was a really, profound journey of just constantly watching people and watching how the response, not just from, both from how people were healing, and where they were getting stuck and blocked, and trying to decipher, what does it mean to heal on the deepest level without skipping steps. And then obviously I wrote my book, The Secret Language of Your Body, which did really well in many countries around the world and sold a lot of copies, and essentially, and still is, in lots of places, and gave me enormous kind of feedback from people, where people from all over the world were like, wow, I'm reading this and it's just me, and it's like, it's so accurate and it's my Bible, and it's, you know, it was pretty incredible getting that feedback, and then going, I'm somebody who loves to learn. So when I say, I learned and it was different, I have an insatiable desire for learning. I've just learned how to discern who to, what teachers, that I would have, and what books I would read, and who would, who I would like, who I admire in terms of how deep they've gone in their journey, because I'm somebody that last year I got my partner to buy me 150 books that I want to, that the kind of books that very few people would read because they're
Oh, yeah.
so complex. And even my children came and they looked and they went, Mom, how are you going to read all these? And I was like, well, I love learning. So again, I don't want to take away from it. It's just that for me now, learning is connected to a foundation of lots of understanding and discernment. And, and that's really exciting because, from that, I've, been able to teach just thousands and thousands of people. And in the last few years, since we had COVID, that the door to, Zoom and online teaching has opened up, which has allowed people from, everywhere in the world pretty much to connect with me. Obviously, they need to still know English at this point. We're working on seeing how to translate, but it's just been incredible guiding people towards their own healing, their heart, their intuition. It's just, it's beautiful
Do
how
you still,
close we become.
yeah, do you still do one-on-ones sessions, or is it classes mainly?
It's, pretty much classes. Besides, at the moment, I'm in the middle of teaching people how to become healing practitioners.
Ah,
So I have a group from all over the world, quite a few people from Europe. And so because of that, I have just connected with different people and tuned in, just to make sure that I still have my abilities. And also, when I do live teachings at times, I'll get people, those people who want to know to come earlier, and I'll tune into them and talk to them. But it's a it's very rare now for it to be like a 1 hour or 2 hour session, just because I am so busy, and I feel like healing needs to have either follow up, or I feel comfortable and confident when I'm teaching people, because then I can direct them to what to do themselves as well. I'm always encouraging, that if somebody gives you guidance, you still need to learn how to support yourself, and
yeah.
how to, do your own healing like I did, essentially.
Have you talked to your parents about your ability, and if there is anything of the same in your in your history, or in your line of yeah,
Yeah,
ancestors?
absolutely.
Yeah. What did you
It
find?
was actually, yeah, it was, the conversation actually started, maybe a day or two after I shared this story about the girl that I tuned into,
Mm.
where I my mum had known how much I was struggling with my back pain and skin conditions and digestive issues, mainly because at times when her and I would be spending time together, and we'd be crossing the road, I would just suddenly freeze up and not be able to cross the road in the middle of the road, and she'd have to drag me. So she was so relieved and so excited when I had my healing experience. And then one day, so which probably I think was maybe the day after the experience I had with this young lady that I was sharing about, my mom called me and she said, your dad hurt his leg at work, and can you do something to help him? And I said to her, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know how to do that. And she said, well, you didn't know how to heal yourself. Just try. And so she's very open minded. So I focus on my dad's knee. And as I was focusing it, I kept getting these images of boats, like just they wouldn't go away. And so I called her and I said, did he actually hurt his leg at work, or was he on a boat? She said, no, of course he hasn't been on a boat. It's definitely at work. And I said, okay, well, can you at least ask him? Because, I don't understand why I'm getting images of boats, and I'm already nervous to do this. And anyway, so she called him obviously and spoke to him, and he called me and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I've been connecting with you when you're in a boat." And he's like, "Well, why are you telling your mum things?" And I'm like, "Just tell me if you're on a boat." He was like, "I was, but what is this?" And I said to him, "I think I've got this new ability where I can, you can't lie anymore." And he's like, "Well, that's fine. Just don't tell your mum again." But, and so it was pretty amazing in that. And in terms of background, as I think I mentioned earlier, my grandmother's mother was extremely clairvoyant. And, my grandmother had told me later that, people would come from, because they lived in a small village, and people would come with apples and they would come with potato and they would come with things to get a reading from my great grandmother
Mm.
on the side of my mom, and her mother. But on the side of my mom's dad, my grandfather, his mother was also quite intuitive, not as my grandmother's one, but very intuitive. And then one day, I think my father is very intuitive. He hides it very well. But one day I remember I said to him, "Fine, like, come." Once I knew much more about healing, I said, "Come, let's just explore this." Because he was like, "I don't know how to explain what you do to other people." And so I said, "Fine, let's do this healing." And so he came over to my house, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, this is going to be interesting," because he's just going to say, I don't believe in any of this. I didn't, experience anything. I didn't feel anything." So I wrote things down as I was tuning into him, and I wrote it down. And and I did some healing, and I wrote down what I thought and what I felt was happening. And so once I finished, I said to him, "Okay, I'm going to tell you what I saw." And I said to him, "Just be nice, don't freak out." And everything. So I told him some of it, and I said, "Oh, actually, can you tell me?" No, that's how it started. I said to him, "Can you tell me what you experienced?" But I was expecting nothing. And he literally told me everything that I had written down in detail. And luckily I'd written it down, because I said to him, "Read it. This is what I wrote down." And he was like, "Well, I never told you, but I'm quite intuitive. I'm as intuitive as you are, but, let's not talk about it again or tell anybody." And so, yeah, that was a kind of a funny experience I had with him. Which, yeah, we never did really after that. He just kind of
It's
went.
interesting how some people want to explore her ability and some people just want to keep it for themselves. And
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And my grandmother absolutely survived the war because of her connection with her mother. And I really feel like her mother guided her through the whole experience. Otherwise,
yeah.
I don't know how my grandmother would have survived.
No. Well, you have some history, you, Ina. How old were you when you moved to Australia?
So we left Belarus when I was 9, and then we spent close to a year in Italy, and because we were on our way to America. And then so when I came to Australia, I was 10 and a half.
Yeah. So, and the reason why you left Belarus was,
My brother was really sick at the time, and he had a really bad lung condition where the doctors told my mum that if they stayed in that climate and in that place, that he would probably die. And
mm,
so my mum, with my dad, who decided that they had an opportunity. They had a lot of family overseas,
mm,
mainly in America. We were always going to go to the US. and family and friends and just different people who had left Belarus at the time. And so we were on our way there, but we had a little hiccup in Italy where you had to go through a particular process where the whoever was the authorities who were dealing with the immigration were either directed you to America, Australia, or wherever else, and they said, "Look, I think we've met a quota for America, so unfortunately, you can't go there at this point." And so my parents had a really good friend in Australia, and so they called him and said, "Can you sponsor us? Because we
Mhm.
actually would prefer to come to Australia. We just didn't think we could before, but now that we're in this situation, can you help us?" And he said yes. So that's how it
Yeah.
happened.
Wow, and you have stayed. Do you have any longing back to Europe?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
My
you do?
partner is actually my partner is English, and so he comes, from not far from London, and we talk about it regularly that, at some point I love Europe. It's in my heart and soul. I spent about 7 years traveling back and forth every few months to Europe, until I essentially had to stop and go, like, I gotta I gotta give mothering a go here, because if I keep doing this, I'm gonna take away from my children. So I had to make a decision, to be, home in Australia and to be the best mum that I can to them, because they were going through their kind of teenage years and they really needed that support.
Yeah.
And then we had the whole COVID when I was going to go back to Europe as well. And so, yeah, my partner and we've talked about it. So who knows? We still have to see what happens, because obviously there is a uncertain situation between what's going on, in Europe and Russia and Ukraine and all of that. So we don't want to just, kind of go into the middle of challenge when it's quite nice in Australia, if we're
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
But eventually that we would love to spend some of our time, if not the whole, obviously not the whole year, because we still want to live, and we have children and family here. But some of the year in Europe, and I miss it so much. I love European people. I love the soul of every country in Europe. Essentially, I just feel so at home there. So I have a longing for it.
Yeah. I understand that. Actually, it's quite unique, genuine up here. I love Europe as well. So, how many children do you have? You started very early.
Well, I have two of my own, and my partner has two, so we have four in between us.
Yeah, that's good. How old are they? Can I ask?
Yeah, so my children are much older because I started younger. So yeah, I have a son who's 23 and
Mm.
a daughter who's 20, and my partner's children are 15 and 14. So
Yeah.
we have a bit of a different.
It sounds like mine. They're between 16 and 20. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Well,
it's it's great.
yeah, it is great. It's fantastic to live with young children who are becoming adults and see how they develop into great human beings. When you found this ability of yours or the gift, is that what you have been working with since then? Is that your career, so to say? You have not you've not explored the journalism further being employed. You have been not unemployed. You have been an entrepreneur since. Is that true? Is that right?
Absolutely. Since then I haven't not had any other jobs. I've written a lot of articles for magazines
Yes.
as, from the healing perspective, or, things that I understood. But yeah, this is the only job I've ever really had. It's been very exciting because it's had so many different aspects of you know teaching, writing, I guess healing, sharing. My partner and I talk about it as I'm in such a beautiful position to do enormous amount of research. I just finished a very profound course where I was teaching people about essentially what happens when we pass over, and that took 10 years of research for
Oh,
me to get to a place of the details that I was sharing with them, and they were having um, moments of saying like, "Oh my God, my mind's kind of exploding from what you've just shared." But I was connecting back into the fact that the earth has many levels and layers, as well as the spiritual world, and that when we connect it, so much of what's actually going on this planet right now makes sense.
mm,
And why we have, you know, essentially, I feel like many people are recognizing this kind of a spiritual warfare that's going on at the moment. And so I was explaining to them in a lot of detail because I spent a lot of time studying this, of how this is occurring, and also essentially even going back to how the earth was created and who are the beings that created the earth in conjunction with, let's call it,
mm,
God, and how the I guess history from the perspective of understanding spirituality occurred from Lemuria to Atlantis to the ancient Indian civilization, and how yoga started, and how kind of you know the Egyptian civilization, the Roman, and where we are at now. So it was a very intense workshop, and my partner was saying, he's like, you are very fortunate, because obviously the amount of study it takes to understand did not come from me just deciding, oh, I can just tune into that did come from enormous amount of learning. And he was saying, you're just so fortunate that this is your career, this is something you can do all day long, pretty much, besides being a mother and a wife and all that.
mm,
Well, partner, I should say. And but it is, so it's like I don't have other careers. I never have. So I've had you know most of my life has been spent in trying to understand, everything from healing to who we are, to spirituality, to essentially our history.
mm. So all the amount of research you do, it sounds like you take it, you bring it into your body and mind, and you reorganize it together with what you already know. Is that
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah? Mm,
That's a really good way of putting it. It's like I assimilate and digest it so that then I can share it. And I look for I look at topics that really feel like are very important for humanity right now, and the challenges that humanity is going through. And I then look for the teachers or the people who have experienced it, and then I connected to my own experience, because I had a lot of experiences in my life too, and my own knowledge, and then I discern what I feel is makes the most logical sense, but also has the most details. I'm a very detail oriented person when it comes to teaching or understanding things, because I feel like it's only in details that we don't skip steps. It's only in detail that we have amazingness and understanding. And so I spent a lot of my life trying to kind of connect the pieces of the puzzle together so that there are details, and so that when people ask me questions, I can answer, if I understand them, some of the most complex questions of why are we here, which is
Mm.
actually, I think I was sharing with you what I wrote in my last book about why are we here, what are we doing here, what's it all about. So it takes a lot of my time, but I love it. Like it's kind of, the life I wanted to live.
So, can I ask you what's on your mind right now that you think that a lot of people need to hear?
I think in the environment where we are right now, in terms of where the world is, I feel
Mhm.
like we need to reorganize or create a new understanding of what the ego is, of what the I am is. And I feel like we're still bringing with us the understanding of the ego that is old and comes from ancient India, which is like ego is bad and we have to dissolve it, as opposed to actually understand our sense of self, and that we must redeem the lower part of the self, which is the selfish, self-focused, aggressive type of, I want what I want when I want. And we need to awaken the higher aspect of the self, which is about selflessness, which is about kindness, which is about kind of, brotherhood, sisterhood, understanding each other. We're all in this together, but we also have to have the wisdom and the intelligence to discern and to think for ourselves and to embrace our own unique qualities and really learn how to understand, not just what is going on politically or what's going on, with other people emotionally, but really, what is happening, why are these things happening, how are they affecting us both on a spiritual and human level. And I really feel like the requirement that I'm seeing more and more is that we must learn how to discern and be our own guide and our own leader and do our own research and discover things. But that it requires a strong sense of self, because
Mhm.
when you have that, you are you respond to life and to the challenges of life instead of reacting to everything that happens to you. So you move from being the victim of life to being victorious and to being understanding and compassionate, in terms of what this is about and where we're going. But I really feel like we're going into a place where we need to learn to connect with each other whilst being individual.
Mm. I I take that from you to me, and will definitely think about that. I think it resonates with me already, and I was thinking this is a great tool to reconnect to the self. First of all, if you have a whole heart, you're more able to connect to yourself and to other people as well, don't you think?
Absolutely. I feel like when you can work with something like that, you learn self-love,
Yeah.
firstly, not on the deepest level possible. You learn discernment, you learn to value your heart, and
Yeah.
thus you would never give your heart away to somebody. That was my promise to myself when I was creating, I guess, this card deck originally for my own self, which
Mm.
was, never again am I going to give my heart away to somebody who's not worthy of it. And thus, in making that decision, it was like, I'm going to connect, I'm going to live my life fully, and I'm going to surround myself, which I have since then, with people who we're on the same wavelength, we understand each other, I feel loved and supported by them. We don't have to agree with everything, but we have compassion for each other, and we're good with the fact that we have completely different perspectives on some things. And but the love and the heart openness is there, and because I realized that when you close your heart down, you weaken yourself. You're likely to become depressed. You're likely to have anxiety. You're likely to be very vulnerable, actually, much more vulnerable to people that can hurt you when your heart is closed and weakened than when your heart is full and you're connecting to all the aspects of yourself, because then you feel that you're worthy. Because and I wrote about the worthy heart, right? The one that you value, because you really start to feel like, you know what, I'm worthy of being treated well by what, firstly myself, and giving myself time, but also by other people. And I encourage people not just to work with this card deck, by giving yourself a little spread, as in, like, well, like we often do, the past, the present, and future, but actually on a daily basis,
Mm.
potentially picking a card and going, where, by asking question, where is my heart at today? Show me, what is it that I need to bring back to my heart today? And then, exploring that creatively, whether, I'm a writer, so naturally, so I would go to my journal, and in my journal, I understand myself. And then when I understand myself, even in my relationship with my partner, I then understand, how do we build love in our relationship together, not just for myself, but for both of us.
Mm.
And so at times, I work with my own cards myself, and I'll pick a card and I'll go, oh, well, that makes sense. Maybe this is something I haven't thought about, or, and I'll sit there and I'll write about it, and I'll go and stand next to my partner, who we work together often. So he runs my company.
Oh,
And he'll look at me and he'll go, feel like you're pregnant with, with something you want to say. And I'll say, is it a good time to share something with you? And he'll be like, yes or no, or maybe tomorrow morning. And then I'll make sure I have everything in my diary about how my heart feels, and then I'll share it. And it's been a really beautiful, you know, experience to help a relationship grow, as well as to help me to be constantly, checking in. Where's my heart at? Am I exhausting myself and not nourishing myself? Am I giving myself away again? Because old habits die hard, as we know. You know, oh, come back. What can you do? And so, yes, it is. I think it is an incredible tool for us to know ourselves, to
yeah.
actually, I think when we say love yourself, it's really know yourself, and
Mm.
know where you have stopped yourself from having, I see it as like having all the colors. I am big into color. You can even see it in my painting. you know um all the colors and the subtleties, and of your life, of your heart. And I feel like the more fully you live your life, you also, you know open that way for everybody, in particular, your children and your grandchildren, and, different people in your life. Because I see it with my children. They're constantly saying to me, Mom, because I've seen you, be courageous. I'm courageous because I've seen you, because I know you started, doing healing work in your business really early on. I feel like I can do that,
Mm.
because you have, like, you've always used your voice, and we know that you came from your heart. Whenever you said things and you were honest, we want to be honest in our lives.
That's beautiful. Does any of your children have the ability that you have, the gift?
I feel like my daughter has, but it needs more time to develop, because it is something you need to develop more. Both of my children are incredible at manifesting things in their lives. So when so we they whenever there's any challenge in their life, we have conversations about, well, how did you create this, and how do you, how are you able to strengthen yourself and get clear on what it is that you actually want to create in your life? And so, when they go, my son goes through much more challenges than my daughter because he prefers challenge, and my daughter is much more. She says, why should I have my own challenge if I can learn from other people? I'd rather be balanced and have, feel good and strong and enjoy life most of the time. And she says, challenges for my brother who, likes to do extreme things and then come back and go, oh, how did that happen? How do I learn from this? How do I make better choices? How do I, create what I want? But both of them are very creative. My daughter is quite intuitive and sensitive in ways, but very strong in herself. Whereas my
Mm.
son is intuitive in a way where he feels people and he connects to people, and he has no fear of connecting to people. He has a very, very successful business that he's built, where he interviews people and does video and photography and editing, and is invited to direct and do things on TV shows. So I'm extremely impressed, I have to say,
Wow.
with what he's achieved. He's in the midst of doing a children's TV show at the moment for one of the television stations that we have. And so he's incredibly sensitive and creative in how he uses and puts things together. And he's learning more how to look after himself now and tune in. And, I think he's got he's doing running at the moment. So my daughter was saying, Mom, he ran for miles and miles. And she's like, I'm really impressed with him. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's nice to hear about your children, Inna. Can I ask you, I mean, to do your work, you need to be your your best self, I guess. I mean, you need to be in a good place, or at least have faith in your connection. Um, how do you work with yourself in order to be there, to be in the zone when you need to? I mean, it's a on demand thing.
it's true. I do say that to my partner. I think for me it's many things. I've spent a lot of time building my that strength, that sense of self, so that in my life I respond much more than I react. I mean, I have my moments like anybody where something's touched me, and I might be in a situation, usually with family, but majority, I would say, of my life, I respond instead of reacting to things. I know how to hold myself. I know how to look for the bigger picture, how to find blessing in a challenging situation. I'm always working on different aspects of myself. So I'm aware, in particular, in terms of emotions, I've developed, I guess, a system of understanding of how to work with your emotions and life story together through archetypes. And so I'm constantly reconnecting with my own. And, so anytime I feel like if I'm experiencing some kind of victimhood, so I'll connect to that aspect of myself and empower it, or an inner child experience, and I'll connect and work with that part, because we all have challenges in our lives. And and I have a daily practice. So I don't get up without doing meditation in the morning. And it's not a kind of meditation where you're just kind of, relaxing or being guided. It's a very, very particular meditation that I've been doing over over 9 years every day where I really connect to the higher beings, to the divine, and I, bring their energy and the connection and strength from the, I guess, from the divine beings and higher world into me, and I feel quite nourished and full from the morning. And I have my, I guess, movement practice. So my partner and I would try and go for walks. We'll live in a place where, if I look out of my window, I see trees, so it's, full of nature. I feel like I'm extremely supported by my partner in what I do. He really believes in it, and um, does a lot to support me, and has created a beautiful team of people that that I have daily appreciation for in terms of what they do and
Mm.
how they help me to share. So I feel like my children are extremely, and my parents are supportive and are constantly kind of encouraging and reflecting, I think, what I do in the world on how it affects them. And so, I feel blessed most of the time. I feel like, it's such a blessing to be in a position where I am, where I can impact people positively, but also honestly, really honestly. I'm not a fluffy type of teacher. I'm somebody who's very direct. Sometimes that's a challenge in relationships where they're like, "You're not teaching now, calm down." Um, I'm very honest in how I say things, and I really see challenges as opportunities. And so to me, even if something really is very difficult, and I've had many difficulties in my life, I try and work with it as, I guess, an opportunity that that this has come to me for me to understand
Mm.
some aspect of life, to be strengthened, and, to help other people. And, a huge issue that the world is going through right now is where we have, a much deeper awareness of people who have narcissistic and borderline type psychopathic disorders, which is seen very clearly in our political system, as well as what's showing up,
Mm.
in many people's experiences and relationships.
Mm.
And again, this card deck is, a huge help for those who've gone through something as traumatic as that, because essentially you're going to have to put yourself back together again and really learn who you are when that has happened. And I think in the past, people, didn't know that it wasn't as big as it is now. And so there's much more demand for, you know, how do we deal with hurtful experiences in life, and pain.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all experience it. And it can be small things and it can be huge things and everything in between. Right. And nothing is more important than the other. We have to heal everything. Mhm.
Not skipping steps is my motto in life. So
That's actually a
everything.
question I had. I was going to ask you, what's your life motto? So not skipping steps. That's interesting. Can you tell
Mm.
us just a little bit more? We did talk
Well,
about it before. Mm.
yeah, over the years, I've noticed, both in myself originally and in lots of people where, we want to have this amazing life and health, but yet, we want to kind of jump from being in a particular scenario to something that requires a lot of work, but we don't necessarily want to do the work.
Mm.
And so, what often happens, even in healing, is that people will kind of they want to get to a place of being healed without understanding that, there's several like steps and levels involved. And so they what they tend to do, and this is the same that I've seen with spirituality, and this is the same that I've seen with people, let's say, wanting to learn a skill, is that they often don't want to do it from the beginning. They just want to kind of go, give me the highlights, just give me what's, but you can't, and um essentially I felt like when it comes to healing and life, you need to be aware of the tendency to go, I want somebody else to do it for me. Maybe another healer, maybe a doctor, maybe a chiropractor. Somebody can do it for me, as opposed to somebody can support me, but I actually have to understand myself. And so there's a whole journey of healing that requires you to constantly be taking responsibility, right? For everything in your life. And people go, but I'm not responsible. I didn't do it. I didn't make myself sick. Well, not consciously, but can can you understand that if I choose to heal myself, then I'm taking responsibility for the fact that I'm the only one who can really heal and transform things in a deep way. Nobody can do it for you. Nobody can get into you and heal you, like in and give you wisdom. Because to me, healing and wisdom are, come together. So then, I said to people, like, you have to be okay with responsibility, and it's a constant, like, I take responsibility in my relationship. I said something wrong. I was in an off moment. I can reflect on it and go, this is not the best way to do it. It's the same with your health. If you and mental and emotional health as well, if you can understand where things came from, you can start to go, well, how do I meet, and this is where archetypal work is so profound, how do I meet this childlike aspect of myself from the wise adult part of me? How do I do that? And, essentially, after we've taken responsibility, we do need to look at, which parts of us have we disowned, pushed away, and pretend that that's not me. Which again is where this kind of card deck is so vitally important, because as you ask that question, it comes to you and you go, I would have never thought about this, but let me think about it. Let me explore, which is the parts of us that we push away, we start to, embrace, and we start to learn about ourselves and our capacity of everything, all our talents, all our capacities, all our, wisdom and depth improves and increases when we do that. We become better parents, we become better children, we become better partners to other people, become better friends, we become better teachers, and so on. And so I feel like, slowing everything down, not rushing. I used to rush all the time when I was younger. I say this to my son all the time because he's like me in that way. And, slowing down and actually taking the time to understand things. And then, just as much as we've got to bring those parts of us that we've disowned back into love, back into awareness, back into strength, we also need to look at, what are the parts of us that where we do have a talent and ability, and how do we deny that and push it down? Because essentially, most of us, in some way or another, have been taught that we should all be the same, instead of that we should all be unique and, embrace the ability that we have in this particular life and existence, and work with it, and how do we make it extraordinary? How do we, and we can't unless it's detailed. And so I've always thought about what does extraordinary mean, in one's life. And, and so working with the aspects of you that can shine, that have the capacity to make a huge difference to many people, is just as important as the shadow capacity. And then, understanding your subtle bodies, understanding how things work, how to work, how to befriend your body, how to befriend your soul, how to
Mm.
understand what is the difference between your soul and the spirit. What's your soul doing here? How does the soul affect the physical body and your destiny and your experience of life, as opposed to what is the spirit doing and why do we have both? So there's a lot of questions that make us full human beings, that are full of aliveness and vitality and nourishment.
Inna, can you describe, you just talked about the spirit and the soul, and I think this is a confusing this is something that confuses a lot of people. Can you give us your short personal description of the soul and the spirit?
Absolutely. The soul is very personal, it's very unique. It's your unique self that experiences the smell of the flower, a connection with a person, um, painting in your own most unique way, right? Nobody else on this planet can experience um your soul like you do. It's kind of like your unique colors, what desires you have, how you feel, every feeling you have is part of your soul. Whether you like somebody or don't like somebody is part of your soul. It's very subjective, it's very unique to you. And in every, if we believe in multiple earth lives, in every lifetime, your soul gets transformed into something new based on the fact that you have a new body. In one life, I might have a body of a female, in another life, I can have a body of a male. We cannot have the same soul because it has to take on, to balance out the physical body, it will have to take on the opposite kind of, not to say gender, but the feeling, so to speak. um the spirit in us is much more objective. It's more like, it's almost scientific in a sense. It's like I can look at a plant, and the spirit doesn't smell the plant or feel the plant. The spirit goes, if we put a seed of this, of the rose here, and we bring some water and we water it correctly, the rose will grow and it will be beautiful. And so the spirit is a much more objective part of you. The spirit is eternal. Whereas the soul is emotional and subjective to that particular life, and then it gets recreated for a new life with still a lot of similarities that it had, both shadow and light, but still new. Whereas the spirit is not. The soul can become sick and create mental and emotional and even physical illness. The spirit never gets sick. The spirit is a part of us that is kind of, connected divinely to God, and is always carrying that essence. And so even if the soul gets lost in whatever we're doing in our lives, the spirit doesn't. The spirit is that eternal part. The spirit also holds all your talents and abilities and kind of assimilates them from one life to another, but also in a particular life. So, for example, when I'm learning to read in a particular language, or let's say English, I'm going A, B, C. That's my soul trying to recognize the letters. And then my soul tries to put the letters together and go, okay, this word means HERT, heart. Once I learn that, it goes into my spirit. And so my spirit allows me to look at, a card deck, and go healing heart, so it connects it all together rather than that I would need to go healing, right? As a, child does when we're learning to read. And so the spirit gives us that more objective capacity. Now we can spend our whole life and not connect to the spirit if we don't want to, and just be completely materialistic and make the soul materialistic. But there will still be a spark of the divine that is available whenever we decide that we're ready to connect and explore.
Mm.
That's the
So
shortest version.
here's a truth for you. So for myself, I think that I've been focusing on, so listening to what you say, it's not 100% new to me, but it gives me clarity that I perhaps didn't have before. So looking at myself, I think I have been working on connecting to my soul more than the spirit. And I wonder, perhaps I forgot the spirit or didn't recognize it. But it sounds like something we should do. How do you connect to the both, to the two?
Well, the soul you wake up with, you connect to every day because it's your feelings, right? And the soul tells you it's connected to also your astral body. So it says, I like, I dislike, I want, I connect, I don't connect. I'm happy, I'm unhappy. This is what's going on. This feels good, this feels bad. So we're always pretty much, from the minute that we wake up, we're connected. When we're asleep, we actually often connect to our spirit because we don't know this, most of us, but we go into a spiritual world during sleep, especially the sleep where we don't remember dreams. And we often connect to our loved ones there as well. The spirit is kind of like your higher self. So we connect to our spirit when we learn about spirituality, like I was mentioning, going, what happens when we die? Because we spend so much time in that spiritual world that is
Mm.
the world of our spirit self. You know,
Of course.
how do we, how do we become wiser? How do we act in a way with other people where we're more selfless, we're more kind, we're loving, not because we're going to get something out of it, but just because we want to be good people. This is a huge part of the spirit. The spirit also asks you to find beauty, which is why I miss Europe so much, because whilst we have natural beauty in Australia, like the most incredible natural beauty, it's not beauty from the perspective of art, that Europe has so much of that uplifts the spirit, doing meditations that have a connection to the divine, that kind of come from, even like Buddha had some beautiful, beautiful meditations. Rudolf Steiner has some incredible meditations. Um, Connecting to others, from a place of meeting them as a divine spark. The spirit awakens when we take responsibility as well and refine ourselves, when we choose to listen to uplifting beautiful music that kind of uplifts our soul, and we choose to learn about who we are, the star system, why we're here is really uplifting to the spirit. When we're I think, essentially it's choosing to come again from the heart, but also discovering wisdom, and also allowing this love, beauty, and I guess, yeah, the word is wisdom, love, beauty, and wisdom, to constantly be part of your life, and being interested in who are you? What is it? Why are we here? People have a tendency, and I write about this also in my, book that I mentioned to you, to generalize everything. And so they kind of go, well, I want to connect to God, but can you? Like, the question is, can you just connect to God without understanding all the beings that are part of our life and what they do, and why they do it? So many of us have heard about angels, but we don't necessarily know the real work the angels do, besides that many of us have heard that, you can ask angels for things, but it's way, way, way more than that. That, every person has this guardian angel that holds their destiny, that holds the threads of their destiny. And, what we often think is God is actually our angel working with us. And then, many people have heard of archangels, but they don't know what archangels actually mean, which, again, this is part of awakening of the spirit and the higher self, because they think, again, archangels are just there to, help us manifest or help us protect us or help us heal something. But there's, again, a huge job that they do, which is connected to our, our culture. Every culture has an archangel there that is guiding it. Every language has an archangel. This is why we're so different, but we're also so connected. And then we have archai, which is, the beings, the higher beings that are guiding this planet right now. And in particular, there's one. And when we have an understanding of that being, we understand why things are happening and how do we develop our capacities, both of connecting to others, of awakening our intuition, of our healing ability. So we have, we start to understand, and then I was trying to explain this to my students the other day, that without understanding how things happen, you cannot possibly understand yourself, or what can occur in the future, because, everything is so intertwined and connected. And, that awakens your spirit in a profound way.
It sounds like we need to. I am a friend of the idea that learn by doing, and when you talk, when you describe this, it feels like we should all go into depth of studies. But wouldn't don't you agree that it's also good to, I mean, start working, start wanting to develop this? The inner journey is a never-ending story, whether you know everything before or not.
I think people should start with that idea that I don't know anything. I still feel like I don't know much, if I'm honest. Which is why I have extra 150 books getting to 200 that I haven't read, or that I keep kind of coming back to and go, oh, wow, okay. Um, Essentially, I feel like, um, you're always coming as this child student, open to learn, open to discover from almost everyone. I mean, when I say almost, I mean there's people that you clearly know that they're not there for your higher good, but even from them you can learn. And the idea is, how do I learn to discern? How do I learn what's really, good for me and my family and humanity, and what's not? How do I awaken, my the possibility of absolutely taking, like you said, taking action, and also understanding that I'm going to make mistakes, and it's not really a mistake, it's just an opportunity to grow and to stop. And mistakes are good, and if we look at them in from the right perspective, then we can absolutely embrace them and grow from them, instead of just, become a victim of them. So I personally believe that it starts from thinking, moves into your heart, into the feeling and the solar plexus, and then everything has to move into your will center. Otherwise, it's not real, which is action. What are you actually doing? And whenever you do something good for others, even if it challenges you, you're in that state of essentially living from your spirit as well, because you've moved from something high into the physical reality of, that we can talk about spirituality all day long, but if you're not a good person and you're not actually doing good for other people, then it's useless. And in fact, it's actually dangerous, because you think that, and I've seen and met many of these people where it becomes ego in the worst sense of the word, which is, power hungriness, that without awareness of your own humility and growth in who you are, and that you actually don't know that much, no matter how much you think and we're all here as students learning. So yeah, I highly believe that, and just take a step on the path of healing and discovery. And what I would say to people is, don't just use your feelings. I've made many mistakes in my life where I've just gone by my feelings. Try and, you know, become wise, work on wisdom, and then connect your wisdom and your logic with your feelings. That's when you can really start to discern. As I've spoken to a lot of my students and, my partner, we talk about feelings. I mean, if you just go by your feelings, which is connected to your astral body and a huge part of your soul, you can, like, my feelings can tell me that, that I want to have kilos of ice cream. My feelings can tell me that because it feels good to eat ice cream to me. My feelings can tell me that taking drugs feels good. My feelings can tell me that being in a relationship with somebody who's destructive is good because I'm attracted to them. So all of these things, we need to refine our feelings so that they connect to our wisdom, and we go, well, hold on, let me stop and actually really feel what's the feeling and where is it coming from. And
Yeah.
again, the more wholeness we have, like we've been talking about this, in the heart, the more wisdom we have as well. That so we start to have heart wisdom that connects to logical wisdom, that connects to, is this right for me to do now?
Yeah. So it's how do you say, an equation of inner journey. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we all
Mm.
have it.
Yes, we do. Thank you for clarifying that. It was very helpful. So we're coming to an end, and I'm letting you go. Do you want to say anything in particular to your Swedish audience? You haven't had the chance for a while.
I'm excited for everyone who gets to connect with this card deck. I'm excited because it brings you back to your heart. It brings you back to warmth in your heart. It brings you back to the wisdom of your heart. It brings you back to the adventure of your heart, to the intuition of your heart. And I feel like, you know, more than ever in Europe, you need that. We need that for Europe and European people to have that. It's, I feel like, is already naturally so, open in Europe, and there's so much depth that people have. But often there is a tendency to, from my experience of traveling all over Europe, many, many times, is to at times focus on the hurts and the pains in the heart, as opposed to, what if we could look at those and the challenges that show up wherever they are and turn them around. How do we work with them? How do we open our hearts even to people that we are challenged by, like, the people that we hear are meant to be our enemies? How do we understand them? How do we understand our family, even if they've judged us or gone against us in something, and work on coming from the higher place, not necessarily allowing them to hurt us again, but how do we have the right boundaries within our hearts where, we discern and only allow people really, really close into our hearts when they want the best for us and not allow those who want to hurt us, so that we don't have to keep creating those hardened shells for, when we do get hurt. I think that European people and people, in Sweden have a lot of courage. That they're there kind of to lead our whole world through strength, through more objective thinking than maybe in some of the places where I live, through strength, and depth and understanding. And I feel like, I wish all of that and more, but also to bring more softness to that experience of moving forward and having to at times battle, with all the forces that are coming to us. So I feel like we're everywhere in the world, we're kind of in a place of we've got to step up and be courageous, kind of like the line in the background. We have to be, awaken our own lion within, or lioness, and at the same time, warmth in the heart. I feel like that's what I deeply wish, and I'd love to hear feedback, and people can connect with me also through Facebook. And even if you can't speak English, I mean, you can just use Google Translate now, and you can share your experience. But I deeply wish for people to connect and love their hearts again and open them.
Yeah. I think that that's why we actually chose to translate this deck, is because it's something different to a lot of the oracle cards that are out there. And it's very focused on a certain part of our body, of our lives, but a central part to not just the physical feeling, but the holistic feeling and the holistic life. So thank you so much for creating this beautiful deck together with Jena. We're happy for it.
Thank you. And your heart is where your destiny truly lies. So, that's the other thing that opens up, is your true destiny.
Yeah, thank you. So Inna, thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to me today. It was very, very generous of you to take this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Appreciate all the work as well. Thank you.
So let's keep in touch, and I'll let you know how things go over here. So first, can you just tell us what's your next project?
Ancestral healing card deck. So I'm just finishing it, and Jenna's done majority of the cards. She's got about 15 more to go or something like that, or 14. And yeah, we're just going in the editing and refining stage of them. So again, coming from my deep experience of both ancestry and the heart, and putting together our destiny and our family and everything, that affects us like that together, and what we take on from the family, and what we should hold on to and what we should let go of, as well as some of the, feminine archetypes from our mother line, and our masculine archetypes from our father line, and all that gives us an opportunity to explore. So I'm quite excited about it.
I am too then. I have to check it out when it's finished. Yeah. Thank you so much, Inna, for your time and your wisdom sharing with us this morning. I wish you a lovely day.
Thank you. You too. It's getting dark here now.
Okay, go ahead to your family and probably making dinner. I'm going to start my work day.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Bye.